Hello, these are your hosts,
Nikki,
Becca, Mariah,
Katie,
and Maeve. Today we want to talk to you about the Church of Scientology. So what is it? When did it start? What do they do? All of these questions will be answered today. You're going to hear about facts, personal and public theories. At the end of this, we want you to know who they are and what they do. And of course, what we have to say about all of this.
what did you guys know about Scientology?
So personally, I didn't know too much. I remember when I was really younger on, I believe it was Musical.ly back then, I would see little videos about Tom Cruise and a bunch of celebrities posting with this fancy S necklace. I didn't do much of a deep dive because I was 13, but otherwise, like beforehand, I knew nothing about it. Recently, although I've seen things about their locations on TikTok, are actually like people are videoing going up to them and acknowledging the fact that
The girl Shannon.
Yeah, Shannon. She's like this icon almost. Like people make edits of her and everything like that, but they try to pretty much just confront them and start screaming like, why are you doing this? You're trying to like trap these people and these.
What are you hiding?
Yeah, they usually close their doors. And I know another like iconic thing is like their smile on her face. I don't know why, but that's pretty much all I do.
I know Scientology is given cult.
Yeah, certainly.
It's definitely.
Especially after looking into it.
After finding out more of these facts that I've read and
Right.
Does it have to do with science? Is it the study of science?
You would think so. I think that's what I thought when I was 13. Like, I didn't understand how.
when you hear the word, that's what you think of. I mean, we know ology means the study of.
What does it have to do with science then?
Actually, the background of it doesn't make much sense.
I don't think it has anything to do with science.
So actually-
I think the creator of it, thinks it does.
Yes,
but it just
L.
doesn't.
Ron Hubbard, he was really into science fiction.
Okay.
When he first started writing, he fell in love with science fiction.
Like, he had a few books. I know he's a writer. Like, he's had books on mental health.
Over
I wonder
1,000 books.
I wonder if that's where it kind of came from, because like it was, he saw it as a science, even though later on I know they try to discredit psychiatry, saying that it's not real and everything like that. I know they've had a lot of issues with that kind of stuff, but I wonder if it's just this man believes so much that he is the one being that's going to teach he's a cult leader. Like he believes that he is basically science at that point, because he thinks that like his beliefs, like we see it as beliefs, he thinks it's real life and it's science.
Well, why don't we get into L. Ron Hubbard? Why don't we find out the history behind Scientology? The international movement emerged in the 1950s in response to L. Ron Hubbard's book, Dianetics, The Modern Science of Mental Health. It was an immense success, expected to sell 6,000 copies. L. Ron Hubbard thought that the only way to make money was to have a religion. And that's what he was trying to do with Dianetics. He wanted to make sure the government couldn't take away his money in the form of taxes. Hubbard's main goal was to analyze humankind's mental irregularities. He wanted to offer help to overcome them.
I know their practices can be really weird, and I know that a lot of it does branch off from his, like what he would talk about in his books, I guess. I don't know, I didn't personally read the books, but basically, and it's like once you hear about it, you're gonna think it's a cult, because he believes that just we aren't a species, we are just our souls and like our spiritual self. And I know they believe that these beings are called thetans, if I'm pronouncing it right. And basically he created this program thinking that it was like the ticket in to become a very successful piece of energy in this world, I guess.
L. Ron Hubbard's, even just his life before he got into Scientology, was a little messed up. He served in the Naval Intelligence in Australia and on several other vessels off the US coast during World War II. He came up with many lies. He told many people he was blinded and crippled in the war, and that the practices of Scientology had cured him. It came out with the fact that all he suffered from was mild arthritis.
Sorry, it's funny, it's not funny.
his wife, Sarah Northrop, came out that he lied about many of his missions. He claimed to have sunk 2 Japanese ships, when in fact, he opened fire on what turned out to be a log.
Mm-hmm.
He also dropped most of his depth charges on underwater magnetic rocks. When he accidentally shelled a Mexican island, that's when he was relieved of his command.
Oh, that took a minute.
Yeah. I mean, after that, he ended up with a small group of seekers, with a man named Jack Parsons. He was the head of a black magic cult that would have ceremonies seeking some sort of goddess figure that he could impregnate to create the Antichrist.
I'm sorry.
Fabulous.
Hubbard moved in and became his assistant. One night, a woman named Marjorie Cameron showed up at the door. She was willing to engage in these acts to
Whore.
Yeah. to have the Antichrist. Her and Jack eventually got married, and Hubbard ran off with Jack's girlfriend, Sarah Northrop, his eventual wife. He was 13 years older than Sarah.
Oh.
She thought he was this war hero. He would tell her so many lies, and she believed everything. He also told her that he would commit suicide if she didn't marry him.
Oh my god.
So that's what pushed her to marry him. Another thing about Hubbard and his wife, he would beat her with a gun.
Oh?
Oh
my god.
Wait, Katie.
Okay, so
Just like
This guy created a religion,
Mhm.
and he used to beat his wife with a gun.
but the reason why is because she would smile in her sleep.
Oh my
And
god.
he was so insecure that he thought she was dreaming of someone else. And he said that he would kill her before he would let her leave him.
So he is manipulative. He is controlling. This is what we're gathering.
he's giving cult leader.
Yes.
For real.
Oh, so let's talk about the IRS.
Oh?
The IRS began revoking the tax exempt status of the Scientology Church. This did not go very well. This started as what the Scientology would call a war. Many people, including the US government, Australia, United Kingdom, their governments just started moving against it. In response to the attacks, the church created something called the Guardian's Office. The people in this were the highest level knowers. They knew everything. According to the church, there were a couple agents who had violated church policy. They began infiltrating government agencies and committing several illegal acts, which they were tried and convicted. These events alerted church leaders to problems in the office following a widespread investigation.
Do we know what these illegal acts were?
They didn't go into detail.
I have seen stuff on
TNT.
human trafficking though.
Ooh.
I remember there was stuff with human trafficking, and then there was also a civil lawsuit with some. It was these like higher ups that were, I think, working at, it was like the organization, I can't remember the name, it was like C something, and I think 3 of them actually filed lawsuits because of working with no pay. Like it was just like pretty much slavery. There were a few other people who were also, I think they said they were raised in Scientology, and throughout the entire life they were doing like child labor and weren't getting paid, or if they were, it was very little. So I do think they don't have a fantastic reputation.
There was this one woman, and she was in the documentary that we watched, and she talked about how the Scientology viewed children. They viewed children as extras, like they weren't necessary. So there was this woman who had a child, and the child was taken away from her. She didn't know where the child went. She didn't know what was going on with the child. One day, she saw this child with 2 women from Scientology, and the child was severely malnourished, not taken care of, and that's when she decided that she was leaving. She called her sister and asked her to pick her up, and they got in the car and drove away as fast as possible out of fear of what the church would do to them.
I think they do also have a history of like chasing after those who have like escaped. That, or like I know they also pretty much just destroy reputations.
They did chase after people. If you didn't tell the church, if you didn't get permission, is what they called it, to leave the church, people from the church would follow you around, record what is happening around you. Basically, your whole life, they're keeping track of. They're spying on you. Because you didn't leave with their permission.
How are people falling for this in the first place? This guy's clearly manipulative and evil. He beats his wife.
I think a good example as to like why this works, or at least a story that can kind of put it into perspective, is a story of a woman. Her name is a woman named Harriet Baker. So she's this older woman who was living in California at the time, and her late husband had just died, and she's in her like upper late 70s. And some Scientologists come by, they knock on her door. They say, you know, we've heard from the community that you've recently suffered the loss of your husband, and we can cure your grief with like 4 sessions. So of course she agrees. She's an older woman. She doesn't have any family she's living with. She just lost her husband. She's in the throes of grief. So she's a very vulnerable person right now. So Scientology, they accept her. They say, okay, we need these little auditing sessions, which are just basically like little interviews, one-on-one, almost like therapy sessions, but they labeled it as auditing. And so throughout these sessions, she's continuing to pay for them. They think they're about like $1,400 each, I think the article said. So after a couple sessions, the Scientologists find out that her home that she owns is actually debt-free. So she owns it in full. It makes sense. She's an older woman. And then they say to her, you know, we've had a lot of these sessions, you stop paying, we need you to take out a mortgage on your house. And of course, maybe it is helping her grief in some ways, just being able to talk about it. So she agrees. So she takes out this mortgage on her house, and, you know, they keep doing these auditing sessions. And actually a couple months later, she ended up having to sell her house because she was in debt. She had no more money. She eventually tried suing them for return of money or whatever, because apparently she hadn't been cured, because there's no cure to grief. And she lost, and she had to move out, and she had spent her entire life savings in her late 70s. And I think it just shows that Scientology is very particular in who they choose. And, you know, I don't want to say victims, it seems harsh, but in reality it is, like, who their next victims are going to be, whether it's a older woman going through the throes of grief or a drug addict, and, you know, insisting they go to their drug rehab program.
So during these auditing sessions, what is happening?
Normally with the auditing, what I found is that it was more of like one-on-one counseling sessions they'd have, but they'd use what they called an e-meter. And from what I understand, it's pretty much almost just like a lie detector test. It tries to look in, it looks at your heart rate and your blood pressure and kind of dictates like what is happening. And pretty much while they're doing this, they are trying to identify and clear what they called engrams, which realistically is they were traumatic memories from this life or past lives, because obviously they were a bit weirdos, so they thought, you know, there's just something hiding. And like May said, the goal was to become like cured and cleared of all of it. And I think another big part of why Scientology is really controversial is because they would be thousands and thousands of dollars for like a 20-minute like auditing session. And they also, like, if you were in Scientology and doing these sessions, they had like not a pyramid scheme, but like levels almost. They would have you like go up to the next level. Oh, because you paid this much and took this many classes or courses or whatever, you are now considered like a thetan, what they called them, and you get these specific secrets. Obviously the secrets of Scientology, like what they preach directly, is not known in detail. I mean, we know that they preach obviously that although we are labeled as human, we are actually just pieces of energy that exist in this universe. They believe that we can separate from our human selves and do whatever and dance around the universe. But realistically, it's unknown if they actually believe this stuff and follow this stuff. Like, the leaders and creators of this, it's unknown if they really believe it or if they were really just in it for the thousands of dollars they would get.
So how do they make sure that their members are following their rules?
They were extremely controlling. I know that they had more like security checks. If there was anything kind of like suspicious or in question, they would do their auditing kind of things. And it's almost like if you think of like Christianity or being Catholic, like how they did. I'm not religious, so I don't know, but it's like whenever they go into the one like thing and talk to the priest, like confessions. Yeah, but it seems like they kind of draw out secrets and disloyalty to Scientology by doing auditing sessions. But usually what happened for a lot of people, unfortunately, is they were scared out of it. Took punishments as such, which we can get into later.
What are these punishments?
I know I've seen the punishments that we know of are what we know about them is very minimal.
So during John Travolta's time there, he requested that his auditing sessions were not recorded. He did not feel comfortable with his information being recorded because he didn't want it used. They decided to record it anyway, and instead of using it to help people, they used it to blackmail him and keep him in Scientology.
To work off of that, obviously it sounds like they were recording and were using a lot of the information that these victims provided to them as the blackmail. Obviously, of course, money, but also I found a article from the New York Post of 2023. Former Scientologists say that David Miscavige, I think how you pronounce his name, he's the current leader. Hubbard actually passed away, I want to say in the 80s, but I could be wrong. And this David guy was the leader. They said during all these legal battles, there was one specific instance where David was extremely agitated and paranoid, thinking that because of everything that's going on, he's thinking there's a bunch of leaks going on in Scientology. It wiped out, it seemed like, a lot of the organization. He targeted a lot of upper executive members and threw them in what's known as the hole. Looking into that, what's really only known about that is it's a detention center.
What you're talking about right now, I think that was listed in the documentary.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had Billy Joel, piano man, playing, but they had them all get into this musical chairs, and they said that the last person standing was the only one who could stay. So people were fighting to stay. There was injuries that were not shared, but many people were injured. They were fighting because they felt this was their place. They believed this stuff so much, they wanted to stay. So many people got injured. In the end, he brought up, hey, so because of my niceness, you can all stay. So these people just fought with each other. They threw chairs out from under each other to stay. And now everyone can stay, and this was all for nothing.
Society views Scientology as a faulty, botched, and flawed organization that hides behind the word church.
But they're a cult.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. And God bless. After a thorough examination of Scientology as a whole, we have come to the conclusion that it is, at its core, a cult. Whether or not the public opinion reflects the same, it is our podcast, and you came for our opinion.
Perfect.